Hello, and welcome to our podcast, Arizona Opera Behind the Scenes. I'm Cassie Robel, the Director of Education and Community Engagement.
And I'm Kathleen Trott, the shop manager for the Marlu, Allan, and Scott Stallard Costume Artisan Workshop. Thank you all for joining us today. In this podcast series, we're going to introduce you to all the departments and people that are necessary to produce the operas you enjoy.
In this episode, we are joined by Alice Fredrickson, the costume designer for the Copper Queen.
So let's start with our trivia from last episode. The golden idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark was also used in which two of the following movies? It was Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Guardians of the Galaxy, James Bond Casino Royale, and Spy Kids 2. And the answers were Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Spy Kids 2, The Island of Lost Dreams. And our second trivia was, the boot that Charlie Chaplin eats in The Gold Rush was made from what? Licorice, jerky, or marzipan? And it was licorice. And he actually gave himself insulin shock because he ate so much of it. He did 63 takes of that scene over 3 days.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, Alice.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
We're glad we finally got it scheduled.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've announced that you would be joining us on possibly more than one of these and then had to reschedule. So
that's how this year's been.
It is, but we're finally doing it. We're making a movie.
We are, and it is exciting.
So exciting. So before we talk too much, I just wanted to start off by saying, so you're the costume designer of the Copper Queen, and we all know that Kathleen exists as the costume manager. So what is your role as the costume designer for Copper Queen? What is that?
My role is to come up with the ideas, the visuals that you see, and then Kathleen and her team executes it. So I do a lot of research. I talk to the director. I read and listen to the music. And I really conceptualize the characters. And I think about color and I think about texture. And I think about all the changes and everything visually you see. I made some kind of decision on it with the director, and then I say, Kathleen, here's what I want to do, and her excellent team helps me execute it. So it's from my head to this team, and then we all work together as you do in theater and opera and now film to do this.
So you touched on it a little bit, but can you walk us through the timeline of a production? And I know the Copper Queen has been through a couple pauses, if you will, but pretending that there were no pauses, what is your general timeline? I think something that I have learned is that the timeline is much longer than a lot of people think it is. So, So when I come to you and say, hey, we're producing the Copper Queen, do you want to be the costume designer? And you say yes, what's your timeline?
Yeah, how far out from our opening is the average? And I know it's different, but
I think it's a year to a year and a half. And to from when I am asked to do it to opening night is a year to a year and a half.
This process has been a little longer because of the postponements and changing, but
right. Yes, which makes it that much more exciting because I'm chomping at the bit to see things, and
I think we all are at this
point. Absolutely.
So can you talk to us a little bit about your design process? You very briefly said that you work with the director. So you're primarily, is it something that the director comes to you about and says, here are my ideas? Are you posing your ideas to the director? What's your design process like?
What's different with every director, and I think that process between the designer and the director can oftentimes dictate how well, how successful the ideas are, because my favorite process is the director comes with me, kind of explains their overall ideas, kind of like has general directions of themes that they're interested in, and things that they want to focus on, or we just kind of talk through the piece. And then I go off and I study the piece myself, and I do research on the period, each character, depending on what that is, and also just like conceptual ideas. And it depends on like if the show is more realism versus more conceptual. And then it is kind of a back and forth. So then I go away, I do my research, then I bring my visual research to the director, and we kind of talk it through, and they say, oh, I'm really interested in this thing, let's go this direction. And then it's just like fine tunes from there. And so I just have like notebooks and pages and documents of things that I've I was going to say like thrown out ideas, but everything informs everything else. And as I was coming here, I'm here in person because we're having fittings, our first like big set of fittings for Copper Queen. And so I was on the plane, like looking through my research to prepare. And I was looking at all of those drafts of things, and I was like, wow, there were so many. And just playing with color and with, all types of things. And all of that informs what you see on stage. I think of it a lot of times, it's like a collage of all the different ideas, and then they get synthesized in a beautiful way, hopefully.
Cool. That's very cool. Have you ever designed for film before?
No.
You haven't?
No, I haven't.
That's awesome. So you signed on prior to it becoming a film, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. And I designed it
prior to film.
Yes. I designed it for the stage first.
What have you had to do to now adapt it to film versus stage?
Well, I had to like take my eye and like zoom it all the way in, because if you think about where the audience's eye is in an opera house, and what they can see and what they're visually taking in, it's like this proscenium, this kind of like picture window view, right? And most of the time they're seeing the whole person, right? And most of the time, and you're probably not seeing the details of the buttons, let's say. And so I designed it for that view, number one. And so I zoomed in and I started thinking about all those details, which like I love. Like I love working with like craftspeople on, like something that I'm really interested in is like getting the realism of the people and the place and the time, which a lot of it is like how clothes wear are worn through, and like what that says about the character, or because things are very typically not very often off the rack, right? And these clothes tell a story about the character. That's why they're there, and that's my job, is not like fashion, it's storytelling, and all those details are part of it. So that got me really excited to be able to tell like the story of these characters in a slightly different way. So that was exciting. And then the other thing that I did was I threw out all of my secret tricks of that I incorporated into the costumes for quick changes, because for Copper Queen especially, the scenes there's like multiple days, and you wouldn't know that the day changes because the set doesn't change. I mean, the lighting will change, but really for the audience's eye, those clothes changing are important, and for storytelling, right? But the stage is not film, and so it's really hard. And I don't, I can't have the singer changing their whole costume. There's not time,
Right.
especially in like a corseted period. And so I did a lot of thinking like about how to add and subtract pieces, especially from the main character, so that we would get the storytelling and the time change into that. But anyway, I threw all that out. And and then I got to add pieces and actually change like full looks if I wanted. And then sometimes it didn't serve the story, so I didn't.
I was just gonna ask, do you have more looks now that it's for film?
Yes.
Kathleen is nodding a
Yeah.
lot that
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
more.
There's not a lot more.
Yeah.
It's just like there were a couple moments, like Alice said, where Julia, out of the nature of doing it in front of the audience, there wasn't time for her to be wearing something completely different because she goes from one scene to the next in seconds, essentially.
But it's a different day.
Yeah.
So
That happens a lot for us, for the weight of the timeline falls on costumes in a lot of stage shows because they can't change the set. And when you can like go, oh, the sun set with the lights and it rose again, and the sun set and it rose again. But the thing that really helps audience really quickly to see that time has passed is physically different clothes
They're
on a
wearing
body.
something different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
does.
she was able to add in a couple completely different looks to help express that, which then also solved some of we did a whole bunch of like, all right, well, if we rig this piece this way, because it has to go on and off on stage, but in the camera situation, you just cut, right? Or you make the camera be so that way we can see the clothes going on and off, but we don't see the actual closure or the rigging or whatever. So it solved some of those problems, which was sort of offsetting now we're adding a whole bunch of detail, but we don't have to put hidden zippers in things anymore because you shouldn't have a zipper because
Right.
it wouldn't have been zippered. But then also she has minutes, hours, whatever to change clothes because the camera stops recording and then we move along.
That's really fascinating.
So then there are different ways to express all these ideas. What format did you end up sort of using to give the costume shop the ideas in your brain? Did you draw it? Did you collage it? Was it just research? Did you have someone else draw it? Because all of those different ways are all valid ways of expressing, because the design isn't actually the piece of art on the paper. It's the thing as it exists, right? So how did you go about, for this process, and in general, do you use a similar process, expressing your mental ideas to the shop that's building them?
Got it. So like I said, I do a lot of visual research, and I, over the past 5 to 7 years, have been really utilizing technology to organize those ideas. And so I have a lot of visual research. I organize it into folders on my computer, and then I make different collages on this app called Procreate, or and also Photoshop. And so then like I make a collage for each character that has, and then I also make a collage for each like conceptual idea. So like for the Copper Queen, it's set in Bisbee, Arizona. And when I was listening to the piece and reading the libretto, the place was very important to the piece, to me. And so I did a lot of research I got a lot of conceptual research like from Arizona, the landscape. Also, I did a lot of research about the mines And so, and like the minerals that are there. So I had like a minerals collage. And so that informs, like textures, and that informs color. And like for when I talk to, the like painter dyer who does all the distressing, that like informs those. And also, it's also important to me to not be, to have that conceptual research, to not be literal, so that I'm not like, see these distressed pair of pants, make them look exactly like this, right? Because all of the people in the costume shop are all artists in their own right, and like I want their expertise to come through. And so just like in the director and I's process, I don't want them to be like, and in this scene, she wears a green dress that's made out of velvet, and you know, and then I'm like, well, you don't need me, then you did it, right?
We all sometimes have to work with those, but
well, right,
not
but
the ideal.
Well, and I don't think that it is the ideal for the audience.
Right.
I think that all of that is felt, and I feel that in the audience. Like, I don't know if you all have seen Hamilton on like the Disney Plus, and like maybe a lot of listeners have, because that's like accessible theater, and like I didn't see it in theater, or I saw it on Disney Plus in the middle of the pandemic, or like when it came out, and I was like feeling
gift.
A lot of feelings because I missed the theater
for all of us in the midst of a pandemic.
But and when it, like, I've been reading about the process, and I know the like costume designer Paul Towswell, he's amazing, or I know of his work. And like all the people that worked on that show, like you can tell that there was so much collaboration in that show to make it that good. It's not like an accident, right? Or like there are reasons why. And as like a theater and opera maker, like that's what I see is there's like a certain freedom and a certain respect for all of those artists. That gives them the feeling of freedom to be like, hey, what if I try this? And what if I do this? Which is what I want. And so what I'm trying to get, I feel like I'm not answering your question. But when I'm trying to, make those collages. So I make the collages. Okay. So I do that part. And then from all of that research, I then draw each look and I use my iPad at this point just because there's just so much freedom, and I can like change colors really quickly. It's mobile. And that's, I don't know, I made that. A lot of people I know, still use like markers, and I think that that's amazing. It just happened for me. And because research is so important to me, I can drop that research right in. And so, like, if you see my collages, I do, like, a clean version, which is, like, just the drawing. But then I also put a lot of research and a lot of notes for, like, the conversations with the shops that are, like, shop copies. But I think those are interesting because they show the process and they show the thought. And there's so many things that I'm trying to like keep in my head and express. It's also helpful to like have them in a one place, right?
How did you end up doing this? Like, did you always know you wanted to be a costume designer? Where are you from? What brought you to our industry and then to us at Arizona Opera?
Lots of winding roads, I feel like. Yeah, so I grew up in Oklahoma, in Oklahoma City. And Oklahoma City University has like a really good musical theater program. And so I grew up like going to those shows and going to see like tours when they came through. But I didn't do theater. I wasn't like a theater kid necessarily. But I like played I keep finding these pictures of like I have 3 sisters, and I keep finding these pictures of us playing dress up, and like I'm like, there's my origin story. I don't know. Lots of kids play dress up, but I just think it is like, it is grown up dress up what I do, and it is also totally not. Mm-hmm. It's both and. So And then I went to school in Illinois. I went to college in Illinois at this school called Knox College. And it's a small liberal arts school. It's about 1,200 students. And I was studying different things. And I had a friend who was in the theater program. And I was like, I've always wanted to work in the costume shop, and like I hear that there are people that work in there, and like and maybe even like and like I know that like some of them get paid, but like I don't even like I just want to volunteer. And he was like, yeah, go here, you like here's the woman's name, and he kind of had to like push me through the door because I was like, oh, I don't know. And then I met the director of the program, Margot Shively, who became my mentor eventually. But anyway, I just like she was like, yeah, you can volunteer, so make this like little project. I forgot what it was. And then at the end of a couple of weeks, she like took me aside and she was like, hey, like we have an opening for like
this is where you belong.
Well, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna pay me to do this thing that I love? And like I realized later that like I was absolutely a hands-on kid, and I just like didn't know it, because I would go to these classes all day and sit and listen, and then from 3 to 6 I would be in the costume shop with all of these people that also, and we were making things, like we were doing this process because Margot really led us more than any like friends that I've talked to. Like there was no process of like, well, you have to be this age to design. There were always students making like student shows, and she was like, oh, you should design that. And so the process I just explained, like I did that really just like at a more rudimentary level. And so like I really got to have a hands-on experience of what that was, which was really important. And I figured out that was a job. And actually like after that I moved to Minneapolis, and I got into that theater scene, and that theater scene I love because it's like a bunch of people that are like, hey, like I have this crazy idea, like do you want to do this thing? And so when I first got there, I was like, I really got to just do a bunch of weird stuff, like in like church basement type thing, or like, and like, and we have a couple $100, what can you do? And I was like, I can go to the thrift store, don't worry, I got my paints, and I really got to experiment. And then eventually I started working as an assistant at the Guthrie Theater, which is like the big regional theater in Minneapolis with like a big costume shop, like, oh my gosh, amazing, like drapers and craftspeople, just like awesome, just like, and like what Kathleen does in her shop, like similar. And I got to work really closely with them and learn from them, and like it was a huge operation just like it is here. And I was like, oh, this is like the costume shop in college, just on a bigger level, right? And so like seeing that scaling and I just have so much like admiration and respect and like love for the people that I work with and like their craft, and just like watching someone make a suit in a week and like and watching like the precision and watching just like the creativity, it's amazing. And so then I just kept designing, and eventually I started designing for opera. And I met Crystal, the director of the Copper Queen, and she asked me to do this.
So what is the craziest, weirdest, coolest thing you have ever been involved in? I know, trick question.
In my life?
In your anything,
or
like
something that I've designed?
Yeah, like either, yes, like a design, or the coolest design you've ever done, the weirdest design, like
I mean, those are my favorite designs. Like the crazy conceptual designs are my favorite. They like, well, I stare at my ceiling a lot while I'm doing them. I'm like, how am I going to solve this? But probably, so actually the last show I opened before COVID hit was January 2020. And it was the House of Bernarda Alba, which is a Spanish play that was made into a musical in like the early 2000s, and it has like a lot of flamenco in it. It's really beautiful, but it really doesn't stop. Like it just kind of like goes from scene to scene. And there's this one, and it takes place in this woman's house with her daughters. And there's this one scene where she is supposed to like be in the bath, and like she's a really hard taskmaster woman. And so this is like a intimate scene where she's, you know, kind of like talking about her or singing about her feelings for the first time. And there's like, we were like, there's no time to have a bath. That's not what we want. It needs to be this conceptual moment. What should we do? You know, and like we talked on and on about it. And finally, I was just doing research, and it's like one of those things where I can't remember how I stumbled on this. But because we were talking about how we were talking about like fabric and like could it move and like how and like what would it be like curtains that come down, because like the set designer was like, maybe I'll do it, you know. Anyway, so I found these photos of basically they're like parachutes wrapped around women's waists in the mountains, and then like it was just like all of this billowing fabric. And so I was like, okay, you guys, here's what we should do. I'm gonna buy a like 20-foot parachute and make it into a dress, and then we're gonna use magnets to like make it look like it's bustled. So when she comes out, you just like think it's a dress, and then as she's singing, like the daughters can like pull on it and it expands, and then it like takes up the entire stage. And then yeah, in the end they did that, and then like they did a whole like dance with it. I mean, like it's not like this, but if you would visualize like kind of like what you did in gym class, like with the parachute, and then you like go under it and like and all of that. So it was like that. But like when I brought it to like they were like, yeah, that's amazing. Then I brought it to the woman who was building it, and I was like, okay, let's do this. And she was like, what? You want me to what? And I was like, well, I bought this parachute, it's gonna be great. And we really had to work together to figure out how to make this unconventional material into a dress and make it's like one of those things where when it works seamlessly you have no idea, but like to make it so that the magnets stayed up when you wanted them to, but weren't so magnetic that they couldn't be pulled apart when you needed to. It was just like an artistic and conceptual, technically difficult thing, but then like when it worked, like with the lighting and all of that, it was like
I'm having Cinderella magic dress flashbacks. We did our last education show that was cut. We only did not even 3 months of it because of the pandemic. Kathleen designed a Cinderella dress that she's wearing, and it pulls, it's a bag, and Cinderella, when she is getting ready for the ball, her hands actually go up into the bag, and then the fairy pulls the bag down around her, and it transforms. She's now in this beautiful dress, and there was lots of trial and error. I think we tried magnets at one point, maybe a magnet snaps. We got it to work, but it's that moment of like, oh God, like, is this gonna work? And then when it does, it is the coolest thing. So
taking the idea and making
yeah, because you know in your head as the designer, that's the thing, is that like, and like what we were talking about process and me communicating my ideas to the shop, like I have it in my head the full moment, right? And like I know that like it will be this magic moment that the scene needs for the storytelling if we can make it work, right? And then when you are able to solve it, and then everyone in the room gets that feeling, you're like, yes,
did it.
Like this is, and like this is what it's about, right?
Do you have like a favorite era or style that you really like designing for?
I did 2 shows back to back that were like late 40s, early 50s. I really like, yes, I like eras, but like this show, we set it in post-war Italy, And like, so then I did a lot of research about specifically post-war clothing in Italy, which like, that was so fun because that was like the beginning of like, and Italy has so much already, like all the craft that goes on in Italy, like the shoes and like the bags with like the different like textures and straws and leathers, and like that was really
well, Italy itself has such a history of clothing at its basis that then to
right, and craft and yes, and so all of that, and so like to bring in those details was really fun. And so I like connecting era to like, and you know, like a dream project, I still can't think, but like it would be something that was like not like American or English, like it wouldn't be Anglo, like it would be something like, I just love doing, you don't often see specificity in like Italian clothes of something, something of like a certain period. And so like that was really fun to do.
Awesome. Well, I think we are going to jump into our trivia questions. I participate as well. I don't know the answer to
yeah.
And then you're going to give the answers next
afterwards.
time.
Yeah. So when we're done recording, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Okay. So our questions. When Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, was touring, its costumes went through about how much glitter per month in re-glitterizing?
Oh my gosh.
1 to 2 pounds, 2 to 3 pounds, or 3 to 5 pounds, which glitter weighs nothing. So think about.
God, it's always unfair because Kathleen themes these questions towards our guests, and I'm always like, I don't know.
That's what I would say most.
I was just going to say, my guess is totally going to be 3 to 5 pounds, just because I feel like if this is a trivia question, it's got to be a crazy answer.
I hope that's true. Although I hope it's not true, like for
That's so much glitter
for the performers' sake.
Well, and sweeping, the crew that has to sweep the stage after the show, because glitter gets everywhere.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's why I think I still stick to 3 to 5.
3 to
I
5.
wish it wasn't that, but that's what I think it is.
Okay, great. One of the heaviest costumes / puppets, because they're both, in The Lion King is Pumbaa, a zebra, or Timon.
Gut wants to say Pumbaa just because he's a big... But then the other part of me, because it's a trivia question, wants to say Timon because I feel like, I'm being tricked. And
I'm trying to remember, because like Timon is like on his whole character.
Alice is making very small hand motions. He's bigger than the motions that you just made.
I was being the performer who was like holding, because he's on a stick, right? Or he's on like a. It was so long ago that I saw it.
He stands in front of the performer.
Oh, so he's like, because I was gonna say, I say either the zebra or.
Well, and the zebras, not to try to sway, but just also, the zebras are a front and behind each performer. Like one performer stands in the middle, so the head of the zebra and the front legs are in front, and the back of the zebra and the back legs are behind the performer. Pumbaa is a similar situation, right, where his face is in front of, and Timon stands in front of the performer. In The Lion King, we have to play fast and loose with sizes, right? Like, it's not the same as in the cartoon, because if that was the case, we would never see Timon as the audience.
Right, exactly. I say Timon. That's what because I think that the zebra is also like structurally, it's not solid. It's in my head.
You're trying to remember? Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. I think it's more of like a sculpture out of like pieces is what I'm thinking.
I think I'm going with Timon as well.
Okay.
With my second answer being Pumbaa.
Okay. Rank them.
Half points.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you had a crazy schedule today, so I'm lucky that we were able to fit you in here.
Squeezed it in.
I hope everyone enjoys learning a little bit more about you and what you're doing for the Copper Queen.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to chat with us, Alice.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Good.
My first podcast.
Ooh.
Oh, your first podcast? That's exciting.
Mhm.
Cool. Hopefully this won't be the last. Well, thank you so much. We'll be releasing a new behind-the-scenes podcast every month, so make sure you check our website, azopera.org. Follow us where?
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you should join our email list so you can receive notifications about all of our upcoming events that you don't want to miss.
Arizona Opera Behind the Scenes is made possible by our lead digital sponsors for the 2021 season, Ron and Kay McDougall. This program is also part of the Arizona Opera Next Gen initiative that encompasses a wide variety of programs that go beyond the opera stage to develop the next generation of opera artists, audiences, and philanthropists. To learn more about the programs that are part of Arizona Opera Next Gen, please visit azopera.org and click Next Gen Initiative. These programs are made possible through the support of Karen Fruin, Roma Witkoff, Jeanette J. Siegel, the Valentine Family Foundation, APS, and Jody Pelusi. This podcast is produced by its hosts with editing and music composition by Sean Mallow.